In today's video, we're going to talk about environments. The environments like your office, your home, different places where you hang out, as well as environments where many of us right now invest a lot of time, which is the internet, the online world, via computers, devices, etc. As we interact and engage with environment, this information and going a little deeper, the interpretation of the information forms our self-image, and we become the interpretations of what we are consuming. So when we look at information and we interpret it from a place of empowerment, we become more of who we are. When we consume information and we see it from a perspective of disempowerment, we become less of who we truly are. As a result of becoming more of who we are, we experience deeper levels of what Eckhart Tolle refers to as the now. And I'll quote from his book when he says, "The reason why some people love to engage in dangerous activities, such as mountain climbing, car racing, and so on, although they may not be aware of it, is that it forces them into the now, that intensely alive state that is free of time, free of problems, free of thinking, free of the burden of the personality." Bringing ourselves into the now, which I sometimes refer to as flow, and at deeper levels of flow we call autotelic, or as I had referred to in the previous videos from the book The Kabbalion, the stage of involution. When we are in this state of mind, we are deeply engaged with our environment. What we're looking for is this being in the now. So now when we're referring to this discussion, we're connecting it back to our vision. So I'll bring this up here, which is the Robert Dilts model. We have a goal, we have a vision. And by being present to the now, and I recommend reading the book Power of Now, we automatically assume the ideal self-image and identity that is reflective of the vision. As a result, and we're working with the Robert Dilts model, we got the layers that are in between the vision and environment: identity, values and beliefs, capabilities, and behaviors. Through autotelic, through flow, we automatically express the ideal behaviors, capabilities, interpretations, and thus our beliefs evolve to become one which I refer to as true self, power of now. All this is found in the simple concept of being in the now. If the concept, at least at a surface level, seems very simple, why is it that we have a challenge being present, being in the now? Well, we discussed this a couple videos ago where I talk about beliefs and faith, which is loyalty to the vision, unwavering, lighthearted conviction in the vision. As a result, we know that everything that shows up is in harmony and in contribution. But over the years, through our experience in life, we have formed beliefs, empowering beliefs and disempowering beliefs. What we want to do is ascend past the limiting and disempowering beliefs. As a result, our true capabilities, which are the skills that we cultivate and express on the journey to bringing forth what we desire. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're an athlete, whatever it is you're doing, your skill, you find yourself deeply engaged with it and cultivating it to higher levels of proficiency while you are in the now. As a result, you feel less doubt, less resistance. Optimal behaviors are expressed. Now, I'm going to reflect upon this based on my experience working with communication skills. In my earlier stages of sales, consulting, and public speaking, I recognized that I always knew what I had to say. Reflect back on your experience. We always know what we have to say. But for whatever the reason, while we were interacting and while I was interacting with people, I just couldn't find the words in that moment to express what I was really feeling and thinking. And if only in that moment I could express as accurate as I could imagine as far as the outcome of benefit for my clients, the communication would flow and the experience would be ideal. Now, I recognize that there was friction. So through the repetition of doing it again and again and again, practice, as well as changing my beliefs, I brought myself to a higher degree of faith, which can also be said being engaged in the now. Now, as a result of doing that, you find that you know what to say, when to say, how to say it. It is said then you've got quick wits. Now you're speaking from experience, and you're allowing that experience to express through you because you are present to the now. So this now, being in the now, is very important. And I want to relate this back now to the concept of environment. If you look at the Robert Dilts model, we got vision at the top, and through the vision flows the identity, the values and beliefs, the capabilities, the behaviors to reflect, to externalize as the environment. As in, you experience the journey from a state of flow, autotelic, stage of involution, the now. And in order to make this happen, which would be ideal, and this is not just for communication, all areas of your life, in order to be more in the now, we want to make being in the now a priority, which is very much what I refer to when I say make flow a priority. Because when you're in flow, you're in the now. You're engaged with what you're doing. You are, as he referred to here, the reason why some love to engage in dangerous activities such as mountain climbing, car racing, and so on, and I've talked to many individuals who participate in activities like this, is they find the flow in it. Now, the truth is you don't need to do these activities to find flow. You can find flow in anything that you do. What you're doing is in an environment. The behaviors are happening in the environment. And it's our interpretation of the environment that brings us into the now, or the flow. And as he states here, that intensely alive state that is free of time, free of problems, free of thinking, free of the burden of the personality. Now, if you watch the video, and I recommend you watch it, the video I did on flow, and I'll put a link in the description, you'll see the parallels on the layers of flow. Overthinking, convoluted thinking, stress and frustration are excluded out of consciousness. Distortion of time. Self-consciousness disappears and you become one with what you're doing. As a result, you have a mind of possibility. What to say, what to do, how to do, and it was already there within you. And it is brought forth from that state of mind of flow or the now. The commitment of selecting the ideal environments and dwelling in those ideal environments. It could be your workplace environments, online, offline, where you go, social media, as well as where you go outside of your work, the people that you're around, everything in this outer world, where you dwell is going to be determining how you can maintain this state of now, this being present. Simply put, environments have the ability to bring you into the now or create unnecessary complexity and convolution and stress as a result of that environment and break your flow. Is it the environment or is it our interpretations? Well, when we go to the depths of this understanding, we'll see that it is our interpretation. So in a way, it's not necessarily the environment, but it's our interpretation. However, we have the ability to, no matter what shows up in our environment make one of our decisions as to what to do next based on these three potentialities. We can change how we relate to the environment, as in change our interpretations, and we'll talk about that in a moment. We can really accept that environment the way it is, in a way that brings us into the now. So when we say change how we relate to the environment, we want to change how we relate to the environment in a way that brings us into the now. For example, for many years, I really wanted to stay consistent while going to the gym. But the information that I was consuming about going to the gym was that it's hard and it's stressful and all these kinds of interpretations that are opinions. But I was believing those interpretations. And as a result of integrating those interpretations, I found it challenging to maintain consistency when it comes to going to the gym. Now, gym being an environment, when you show up there, all of a sudden you see everybody stressed out. I recognized that it was based on my interpretations that I assimilated. So then I started connecting with people that were very consistent on their workouts. And I started to find myself in online forums, watching YouTube videos, where people are speaking highly, positively, and affirmative towards maintaining consistency in their workouts. I was placing myself in those environments, consuming that information, assimilating those interpretations, and then I found myself being consistent when it comes to going to the gym. The same is to be said about sales and different aspects of business building. Some environments had interpretations that I would say created unnecessary friction, convolution, stress, and some environments where I was consuming information were presenting information, and I was interpreting that information in a way that was empowering. So thus, I changed how I related to the environments of going to the gym and other related environments. And then when I found myself going to those environments, all I seen was people enjoying their experience there. They wanted to be there. I didn't see the stress. And it was interesting because it looked like two different worlds. The environment changed based on my interpretation. Now, the second is acceptance of the environment. So, as stated, we could work with any of these three things. You pick the one that is applicable for whatever environment that you're dealing on the day-to-day journey to creating and bringing forth your vision. Next is acceptance of the environment. So acceptance of the environment means really accepting the environment. For example, perhaps you would like to live in a certain house. And in that house, you imagine having this ideal office. Maybe it's overlooking certain landscape or overlooking the ocean or something like that. Something really inspiring for you. So you imagine that. And you say, one day I'm going to live in a house where I have an office that is overlooking this certain kind of scenery, certain environment. But right now, I'm working in this office that has no view. I don't want to be here. I'd rather be in that other environment. But if you're going to, in that moment, compare the current environment to the other environment, and every time you show up in your current environment, you get frustrated about it, angry about it, you'll find yourself further affirming a state of mind that is not in harmony with being in the now. Being in the now really means deep engagement. And some environments, because we don't accept it, brings us out of that state of mind, which we call now. So we then, in the moment, can look at that environment and say, well, this is a temporary thing. I'm only going to be doing this for 1 or 2 months, and then I'm going to be moving on. So for now, I accept this environment. Number 3 is change the environment. What we do when we change our environment is we bring ourselves into an environment, when working with this information, that reflects a higher degree of flow and being in the now. So if for whatever reason you cannot accept the environment and you cannot change how you relate to the environment for whatever the reason may be, and there's no right or wrong way of doing this. This is really about your own way of doing it based on your inner dialogue, inner interpretation. You can change the environment. If the environment is disempowering, you could leave that environment. If the online source of information is communicating in a way that brings forth a higher degree of doubt and fear related to your vision, of course you can change your interpretation, but for whatever the reason may be, you don't want to change the interpretation, you can stop consuming that information. Now, as a result of doing these things, we find ourselves in higher degrees of flow and more present to the now, and as a result, maintaining our ideal state of mind, which is what we want. As stated, we've got our vision and we've got our environment, and everything flows from the top down. The identity represents the ideal self-image, the state of mind. All we want to do is maintain a higher degree of flow and being in the now in relation to our vision. And one of the major reflection points is, how do we feel in the environments that we are in? We want to take inventory, and this has been one of the most powerful things that has helped me along this journey, maintain a higher degree of flow and deep engagement in the now. That no matter what environment shows up, online or offline, I could either change how I relate to that environment, I could fully accept that environment, and I mean really fully accept that environment, or I could change that environment, and any one of those things will work depending on what it is. The answer is it depends. When we look at these attributes here, these three areas, we might want a little bit more stimulus as to why would we apply one of these categories versus another when it relates to an environment. So again, in summary, we're understanding that the environment that we place ourselves in, online and offline, and the different environments, have the ability to further affirm our vision or have the ability to, based on interpretation, by breaking our flow, creating unnecessary complexity and convolution. And all of that is based on interpretation. And you have the power to change it based on what is in harmony to your vision from these three aspects here: how you relate to the environment, full acceptance of the environment, or changing the environment. You got to reflect back. This is a very important thing to do. On your day-to-day journey, look at the different environments that you're in and ask yourself, do I feel present in this environment? Do I feel flow, and am I in the now in this environment? And if not, what can I do? So as mentioned, here are some reasons why we would pick one of the three categories. Long-term thinking, organized, and purposeful. There are certain environments, and the example that I gave earlier, where it's important to change how you relate to those environments because there's a long-term benefit to doing that. Because maybe if you're going to move into that other house that has that ideal office, for whatever the reason may be, you're not going to do it right now. It's going to take a while. And so this relating to the environment right now, changing our interpretation to relate to the environment, helps cultivate a higher degree of long-term thinking. Now, I recommend both, thinking short-term as well as long-term. Long-term being, okay, this is the way the environment is right now, but I'm going to accept this environment right now. I'm going to change how I relate to this environment right now. And as a result of changing how I relate to it, with the example given, or an example would be if you're in an office and you're working in a company and you are ready to move to the next level of your career, but that environment, the office environment, is stressful. You're saying, okay, well, I already have a plan. I'm going to grow this business, and I'm going to move out of this job and transition into my business. So for now, I'm going to see what kind of opportunities reside in this environment because I know I'm going to be here for the next 4, 5, 6 months. So as a result of working with that environment. And I'll give you an example. When I was in corporate, there was a certain point where I recognized that I wanted to go into entrepreneurship. Around 2008, I was ready to make the move. And I no longer felt resonant with that particular environment. And I found that I really wanted to go into entrepreneurship. I really wanted to make that move. However, I was going to be there for a while, so I was going to find the greatest opportunity to further develop certain skills, learn from those experiences while I'm there. In those moments, I had the ability to learn some leadership skills that I was looking to develop. So I had different responsibilities where I could further develop some leadership skills. There was some project management skills that during those months I could develop even further. There was certain technological skills. As a result, I was able to build on certain skills and then parlay that over to my IT business while I was there because I was thinking more long term. Now, purposeful is another way of looking at it. I was giving meaning and purpose to that environment. So we change how we relate to the environment by seeing it as more purposeful. Now, I put organized in here because I recognize that some environments can prevent us from maintaining ideal state of flow, ideal state of autotelic. However, we can actually organize that environment in a way and challenge ourselves to organize that environment in a way that brings us into the now. So you're going to be in that environment for a period of time, or you're going to be in an environment. Then what if you change how you worked in that environment? Maybe the location of your office. If it's the online space, then maybe it's how you consume information or the time of day you consume information. You're becoming more organized in facilitating a higher degree of presence to the now. If we have more of an organized way of thinking, we feel more in control. When we feel more in control, we allow ourselves to express more so. Thus, we're also changing how we relate to the environment. Now let's talk about acceptance of the environment. So you got to accept the environment. One of the reasons why we would want to accept an environment the way it is for a period of time, or maybe even long term, depending on what it is to develop a higher degree of ability to see harmonious integration with an environment. If you run away from environments and you keep encountering the same environment again and again and again, perhaps one of the things that is happening is you have not developed the ability to harmonize with an environment that seems to be similar in the different places that you go. For example, in the business space, someone might take a job in a sales position and they have challenges in that sales position, and they feel that by leaving that sales position and going into another sales position in a different company, they will be able to thrive in that other company. They show up in that sales position in the other company, and they find, again, the same kind of patterns replaying itself. Perhaps then they have to recognize that this may require a acceptance of the environment to develop a higher degree of harmony. They find a way to become more harmonious with the environment. Maybe they change how they relate to people, or they change their working style, and they become more harmonious with that environment. They become accepting, really accepting of that environment. Another thing about accepting environments is it leads to a higher level of courageousness. So one of the things that we want to develop is a higher degree of courage. Certain environments challenge us and may even seem chaotic. I call this controlled chaos. You actively put yourself in an environment that is challenging, and as a result of overcoming that challenge through acceptance of that environment, you develop a higher level of self-esteem, self-confidence, and skill. When we talk about courage, like with a lot of things we talk about, you can consume a large amount of information surrounding the theory behind courage, but what we're really looking for is experience in relation to courage to cultivate wisdom. As I refer to, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. And some environments stimulate a higher degree of wisdom by challenging you via the experience, which ties into the next element, learning. Why would somebody accept an environment? Because that environment presents learning opportunities. Yeah, it might be challenging, but one of the ways we find ourselves present to the now, deep engagement, in flow, is the textbook definition of flow, where challenge meets skill. So you recognize that you're being challenged by the environment, but you're rising up to higher degrees of skill. Now, why would somebody change the environment? Well, some environments are exhausting, overly pessimistic, and mundane. Nothing is really happening. You're not really making progress. A lot of times, when you're not making progress, you're actually going backwards. Or it's exhausting because that environment is just overwhelming, and for whatever the reason may be, it is that way. And some of us might actually try to change how we relate to that environment, accept that environment, only to find that we're not able to accept that environment at that given point. And by not accepting that environment, we find ourselves breaking our flow and getting stressed and frustrated over the course of extended periods of time, leading to burnout and lack of motivation and drive towards bringing the vision, which can lead to giving up. So we want to recognize that this is something we also want to keep into consideration. There's nothing wrong with changing the environment when you recognize that it's no longer a helpful environment. It's no longer serving you, and it's not bringing out the best within you, which is probably further creating disharmony with the people that are in the environment. Now, these are some of the reflections, these points here that I pulled as a result of my experiences. But the truth remains the same. With whatever environment that we are in, we want environments that facilitate a higher degree of flow and being in the now towards our vision. And if those environments, being offline and online, are environments that we're in, break our flow or detach us from deep levels of now, then the interpretation is from within, and we can change it by 3 ways: how we relate to the environment, full acceptance of the environment for reasons that you know consciously, full acceptance, or changing the environment, going into a different environment. And these are the things that we can do. We have the power to do any one of these things. And you know the answer depending on what you're dealing with. It could even be done in combination. Change the environment because it's too overwhelming. You bring yourselves into a nice center, and then you go back into a similar environment with renewed spirit, ready to do it again. This is what happens sometimes in entrepreneurship. Someone will start a business. The business might not go out the way that they planned it would go, and they take maybe 3 or 4 months off. They step away from the business world, and then they go back into that same environment or another environment with renewed spirit, ability to accept it or relate to that environment differently as a result of newfound perspective. And as stated here from the quote, that intensely alive state that is free of time, free of problems, free of thinking, free of the burden of the personality. Now, this is a way of being that can be experienced for longer durations of time. If you commit to integrating this information and experience being in the now for longer durations of time in the environments that you know you got to be in to produce your vision, then you will find that the mind of possibility, otherwise we refer to this as infinite intelligence, is revealed. If things shows up, you know how to deal with them. You're deeply engaged. And these activities that you would do every day have more meaning, more purpose, and you'll find you'll make a lot more of an accelerated progress. Because by experiencing deep engagement in what you're doing, you'll bring forth your identity, which is in harmony with the vision, the self-image, as you observe that the ideal capabilities and behaviors, which I call five sensory integration with the environment, harmonizes with your vision. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.